All right, guys, we are going to be doing a lesson over how to draw eyes. So we're not done doing grids. We've learned that technique, and we're going to learn how to draw and shade facial features and the facial proportions. And then you guys are going to get to do a grid of your face. So, anyway, so we're going to start by, I'm going to turn my paper landscape style, and that'll fit the shape of my eye a little bit better. I'm also going to have I have a regular pencil, a couple of shading pencils, I have a 2B and a 4B, and then I have a couple different blending sticks. If you don't have the blending sticks, it's okay. You can use tissue or even a scrap piece of paper if you need to. So, not a big deal. If you don't have shading pencils, also not a big deal. You could just use your regular pencil. That'll be fine. So, all right, we are going to start by drawing kind of like a football shape. This is sort of how I start my eyes. And now, something with art, you should always remember there's more than one way to do things. This is the way I do it, and I like how it works, so that's the way I'm going to teach you. So I'm going to start with kind of like the top part of the football, and then I'm going to have the bottom part. Now, it's always better, guys, those of you that like to draw small, draw big, okay? You will be able to get more. We're going to put in quite a bit of detail, and if you're drawing an itty-bitty eye, you're not going to be able to get that. So, I mean, you can see this is the size of my paper here, and that's at least how big I'm doing my eye, okay? So get that to where it's pretty even on your sketches. Erase parts that you don't want. Okay. A little bit more. So after we do that, we're going to do, we have that kind of little, like say our nose is over here. We have kind of that little squishy part in our eye where kind of our tears come out. So we're going to add that. Now, what you want to do, a lot of people forget this, and I think this little bit of detail makes a big difference on making an eye look realistic. So we're going to continue, however this top line is curving, we're going to continue that just a little bit farther down, and then we're just going to kind of do a little like curvy line right there, okay? But you want to kind of continue that little line. We also still want to keep this line in here because that's kind of that reddish pink area, and this is the white of our eye. So we still want to kind of define that. Okay, so now we're going to add the iris. We want to make sure that it is a circle. We don't want to do, let me see if I got a little scrap piece of paper here. I'll just flip it over. So usually our eyes are not always fully, like we don't usually see the full circle of our iris. It's usually covered by our top eyelid a little or our bottom eyelid. But we don't want to wind up doing like an oval. You know, we don't want to squish it. A lot of people squished it in it, and if you were to continue that, it's going to be more like of an egg shape versus a sphere. So you want to make sure we get that full circle in there. Again, however, we're not going to see that full circle. We might see the only time we would see is if like someone's surprised or scared and their eyes are just open real wide for a second. But what I always like to do is I'll start kind of, maybe I can see the bottom maybe of it, but then like let the top be overlapped by the top eyelid or have them both be slightly overlapped. However you want to kind of make it. I always am going to kind of lightly finish my circle and adjust my circle so that it looks round. Let me zoom in a little bit. It's a little flat, so I'm going to tweak it a little bit more out here, make it a little bit more rounded. And I'll just keep adjusting until I get a pretty good circle. Then I go back in and I erase the parts that don't help it be a circle. That's why we sketch. Oh, I think I erased the part I need in that area. Okay, so after I get that circled the way I want it, I'll go back and erase the part of the circle that we actually won't see. It'll be covered up. Okay. And just something to kind of keep in mind as we're working through our facial features, everybody's like, there's no one shape of an eye. There's no, there's several different ways. This is just kind of a blueprint. So, you could have a more closed eye if you want. You could always bring that bottom eyelid up some more, or whatever. Or maybe they're more narrow back here, more tilted. It's just depends on the individual. This is just, again, kind of the basic steps. So we have that now. We're going to do our pupil. Okay, we want this pupil to be in the middle of the circle. So that's also kind of why I like to do this circle here. I can still kind of see it, which is fine. I'm going to shade over that, so that won't be too bad if we still see it. But I'm going to use this very, very carefully to help find the middle of my eye. So your iris, remember this whole colored part is your iris. Your iris might be, you can always change it. Maybe it's positioned more over here because you're looking this way, or positioned over here because you're looking out this way. But the pupil is always going to be in the very middle of your iris. So I'm very lightly kind of dividing my circle into kind of a pizza, just so that I can find the center of it. I'm going to erase these, but these eventually, or actually I'm going to probably blend them in. These are actually going to come in handy when we add some details of the eye. So I'm not going to erase those for just a little bit. But that's where the center of my eye is, and that's where I'm going to try to make a nice round pupil. Again, we want this to be a circle, not skinny in any way, not oval. We don't want cat eyes, reptile eyes. We want a nice round circle. Okay. So once you kind of get that how you want, you can go ahead and kind of fill it in, because it'll be black. However, you may not go super heavy right now because we are going to add a highlight to our eye, and sometimes that highlight, I might let it overlap into my pupil a little bit, and I'll still need it to erase where I'm going to put that highlight. So I'm not going to go heavy just yet. Okay, so next, I'm going to kind of give that detail of the eye. So if you've never looked really close at an eye, I'm sure y'all have, but we have this kind of texture that kind of goes in our eye with our color. And the outer ring of our eye is usually always darker. And then also usually gets a little bit darker in color back closer to the pupil. So you might try to make this outer ring just a little bit more uniform in thickness. If you're doing green eyes, you'd have a darker green thick line around the edge. Or if you were doing blue or brown or whatever, your color would be darker here, and kind of a uniformed outline. So we're just doing this black and white today, but if you were doing this in color, you would probably have a couple different tones of green, and you would be doing the texture we're doing with just darker colors and a lighter color, at least 2 different tones, maybe 3. But so these lines that I kind of put in here, that's going to help me kind of make sure my lines stay like the angle they should. It's very easy for people. They'll have their pupil, and then they start these lines, but then these lines kind of start going kind of swirly, if that makes sense. They don't stay angled up in the middle. They kind of start to twist and turn a little because they don't have a guide. And that's all this is. This is a guide to kind of help make sure we are staying on track. So I'm going to kind of do like a back and forth zigzaggy motion, sort of like that, just to kind of get my base in here of my texture. And I'm going to just kind of make sure I'm staying along those guides. And it might be easier to, and they don't have to stay perfectly straight. You actually really don't want them to stay perfectly straight because they're actually very kind of wobbly in there, but you still want them to angle in correctly. You don't want it to start to spiral. You also want to try to not let those guide marks be heavier in tone. They're meant to kind of blend in with your texture that we're putting in. When I darken that pupil up, it'll look a lot better. Okay, so we kind of have our texture. So that's just kind of like the map of it. So then what you want to do is you want to kind of come back, and the values are kind of uneven. Like they kind of have, like where it's really thick, you'll have like a bunch of shorter lines, and then you'll have the occasional line that's darker that'll kind of spike out a little bit taller. So I'm going to kind of go back in here and sort of do that. Don't make it too uniformed either. Let it be kind of random. And I'll do the same thing when I get next to the pupil too, kind of coming out, because it should go dark, light, dark. And if you got it covered up by an eyelid, you'll have to kind of maybe make those. Don't make it even. It's kind of hard to not do that when you get into a little flow, but try to just keep it sort of spaced out. That looks a little funny right now, but after we finish, it'll make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to do the same thing up against the pupil. I'm going to kind of go around. That pupil's going to be really dark, remember. So, and you won't see this amount of detail in an eye unless you're doing like a close-up of an eye, to be honest. But a lot of people like doing eyes, and even just as for free time or however. So it's good to learn how to do this. And like I said, there's more than one way to do it. My way is not always the way that will work for you, but this will at least get you going. So, I'm going to zoom that out a little bit. Looks a little bit better. Actually, I marked quite a bit darker on that side. I didn't realize. So, we're also going to kind of, I've got my little tiny blending stick now, and I'm going to kind of go over that with my blending stick, sort of in the same, I want to make sure I'm applying it the same way I applied the pencil. Because if I just try to smooth it out, I'm going to lose the texture, but this will kind of soften it a little bit and probably make it just seem a little bit more natural. Yeah, don't just take it. I know a lot of people are going to do this anyways because they're not listening to me right now. sitting in class without their headphones on, they're going to wind up going like this, and then it's going to just wind up looking like a thicker, dark ring. But you want to kind of repeat that so we don't lose that texture. Now, it's okay to kind of do that right along the edges, but you don't want to do it the whole way around, and that's it. You want to keep the lines going. All right, so I'm going to come in and I'm going to go ahead and determine where I want my highlight, so I can go ahead and put that in, and then I can darken my pupil. So the highlights will reflect according to the lights around it. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and put this in first. Before I do that, I'm going to put my highlight in later. I'm going to come back to that. So, around our eye, we have our eyelid, okay? And our eyelid should not connect to this. A lot of people want to kind of connect it to here, but leave a gap between where the crease of your, you can actually see it where you can see it. You don't want to connect here and here. Okay, you want to leave this open, and that will help make it look like it's the skin's attaching to the rest of the face. Okay, so leave a space there, and then you're going to, it's going to be a start more narrow here, and then you're going to kind of let it, I always let it kind of widen out towards the back. Some people, though, especially kind of depending on the age, it might dip back down and then it kind of go into like a little eye wrinkle. But you guys are all young. I'm sure y'all don't have wrinkles yet. Or some people have hooded eyes, and that happens at all ages. So if you have hooded eyes, you might have to bring yours back down and then add like a little swoop for where your eyes are a little bit more hooded. But that's okay. So we have like our crease of our eyelid, again, not connecting here and not connecting here, leaving that gap open. So we are going to start adding some shading, and we're going to shade our eyelid, and we're also going to shade, we've already kind of shaded in here, except for this and our highlight. So because we have eyelids, and because the white of our eye goes up under those eyelids, our eyelids are going to have a shadow on the white of our eyes. So you could almost just use, probably like for me, I have quite a bit of pencil sketch still hanging out right there that I can blend out. So I'm going to blend that out. And I'm going to kind of let it fade. A lot of people don't realize that even though our eyes are the white of our eyes, they assume that there's no shadows. But even the white of our eyes are not the whitest thing in our eyes. That light reflection is still going to be whiter than the white of our eyes. So we are going to also have a little crease in the corners, shadow in the corners, because our eyes curve back into our head, and that's going to be that it's rounded. So all rounded objects kind of have that shadow as they curve. So I'm going to put a little bit of a light shadow, and I want to make sure I'm fading my shadow pretty well so that it doesn't look like it's just stopping with a hard line. Okay, we never want our shadows to stop with a hard line unless its intent for like to show really harsh lighting. Okay, I'm also going to bring a little bit of a shadow right down. I don't really want these to be too dark. Okay, I want them to be pretty light, just there to show form. Okay. We're also going to add a little bit of a shadow right in here too. Okay. So I just kind of, again, I'm using kind of the pencil that's already on my blending stick and the pencil that's on, a little bit of pencil on the paper just to kind of soften that edge and pull a little bit of a shadow in there. I still want a bit of highlight though. Okay. All right, so now that I have kind of that shadows on the white of the eye, I feel better about putting in my highlight. And really, you just kind of want to erase it in. So, and it can be kind of, however, because light's going to reflect in so many different ways. And I feel like the highlight of the eye is what really brings it to life. You know, it takes it from like a dead eye to a live eye, I suppose. So now that I have that figured out, I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to really darken my pupil. And right now, this is where I've got my darker shading pencil. But again, if you don't have a dark shading pencil, you can use your number 2. That'll work fine. Just press harder. Now these lessons that we're learning this week and next over facial features is going to come in really handy for your art history sketchbook this month too. We're doing the Renaissance and all of the choices are also faces. You can also utilize your grid technique that you just learned on those as well. Okay, so let me turn that light off. There we go. You can see that better. You can see the contrast. That shine from the graphite kind of sometimes makes it a little bit harder to see that. But you can see now a little bit better the contrast. So you want that really dark, okay? We are now going to shade the eyelid, okay? So I'm if you have a 2B, maybe you want to use that. If not, you might just stick to your number 2 because they're not too far apart. So on my eyelid, I'm going to very lightly, remember with shading, in most cases, you're going to want to start with your pencil first, okay? So I'm going to start along this line and I'm going to work away from the line, okay? And I could always go darker if I need to. But we have that where our bridge of our nose is, and then we have our eyebrow up here. So we have that kind of dip in our eye where our eye socket is. And that shadow is going to go from that crease. And it's going to fade up to where our bone structure is for our eyebrow. So I'm just applying my pencil the best I can. I'm going to smooth this out. And you might use blended pencil side. That might help you because when you apply it and it's kind of sketchy like this, sometimes it gets a little too hard to smooth out. But I'm planning on using a blending stick anyway, so this should be okay. So I've got my kind of value change applied there with my pencil. So I'm going to take my other, this is a slightly bigger blending stick, and I'm going to get along that crease, and I'm going to kind of buff it out, okay? If you find that your pencil's not doing much or it's not really blending and you can still see your strokes, you probably need to apply more pencil because you probably have already pushed that graphite as far as it will go because you can only push it so far before you have to apply more. And that's okay. Layering is a part of art that everybody needs to get used to. So I'm buffing it out. Right now it looks kind of rough, but I'm not done. Okay. I'm going to continue to kind of buff it. I don't like seeing where my shadows stop. I really don't. So I kind of lightly mocked in this bridge earlier. I don't know if you did or not, but if you did, just kind of let it buff out so where you mocked that in. And then I'm kind of also trying to very lightly buff out my edges. So I kind of like, I personally have a preference of doing this kind of circular motion when I'm doing skin texture. I feel like it helps kind of, our skin's a little blotchy, you know, it's not perfectly smooth like porcelain or anything like that. So I kind of like doing this round buffing because I feel like it gives it sort of that more realistic skin texture. Now, if that doesn't float your boat, which mine's a little too rough and it's not wanting to smooth out for me as much as I would like by doing that, you could also take a tissue afterwards and just kind of help. You might give it a once over just to soften that texture a little if it's too textury. So that made it a little bit more subtle, and I like that better. Okay. So we are also going to shade the top eyelid a little bit. Now, our eyelid catches light, so we don't want this to go too dark. We just want to give it a little bit of a light shadow. I have a bunch of graphite on my blending stick. I'm pretty sure I do. So I'm going to try just using what's on my blending stick first, and I'm going to go from this crease and I'm going to fade it down just a hair. I don't want it to go too far because I still want that highlight. But my crease here is curving back. So just like the white of her eyes, how they curve back into her head, we have a little bit of a shadow there. We're going to have a little bit of a shadow here too on our eyelid where it curves back. Let's see. I don't really like. I can still see that. Let's see if I can erase that my line from my pupil. I might have sketched it in too dark. I still kind of can. So I'm going to probably just really softly try. I'm going to probably add just a little bit of a light gray just to kind of camouflage that line I apparently drew in too dark. Still noticeable. It's one little spot. Okay. All right. So, let me zoom out just a little bit so you're kind of seeing a little bit more of the full picture. Again, I've got kind of like my bridge over here, and that's going to connect into like our eyebrow bone. Okay. So we still have our eyelid on the bottom. You are going to add, we have this like little, like where, we don't see it on our top eyelid because it's facing down, but on our bottom eyelid, since it's facing up, we have this little edge that's really close. I guess for those of you that are used to doing eyeliner and stuff, it's your waterline. Okay, we have that waterline right next to our eyelid, and that is actually a highlight. But we should kind of, again, you won't see this unless you're doing a close-up of an eye. But it's good to know it's there, and that's actually also this gap in between the white of our eye and this waterline is where we will pull our bottom lashes out of. Like, they kind of grow out of that spot. So I want that a really narrow edge. I don't want that too wide. But I want it also wide enough where I can pull my lashes out of. Okay. I'm not connecting that here. I'm leaving that open. I'm not connecting it here either. I'm leaving that open. Okay. So I'm going to redefine that line because it kind of got blurred out. So here, we're going to, when we do our shading on this, we're going to do a little bit. I'm going to try to use any graphite that I already have on my, I've got my little tiny blending stick. Again, if you don't have it, just work with what you got. I'm going to kind of pull a little bit of a shadow out from just right under that, because this, like I said, this catches the light. So we want that to be brighter. I'm going to try to erase, I got some smudges in there. Okay. So I'm going to kind of blend that just a little bit. And then I might switch, now that I kind of got along that edge, I'm going to switch to my little bit bigger one. And I'm going to kind of connect these shadows here. Okay. Because we kind of, where this is, it kind of gives a little bit of a highlight too, light sort of catches there. And then I'm just going to kind of buff out my shadow a little bit more. Okay. And then a lot of people are kind of hesitant to add, we do have kind of a shadow right in here, but I always try to make it really subtle too, especially if I'm doing a younger person. If it's a darker person, or a darker person, an older person is what I meant to say, where they might have more bags or something, I might make it a little bit darker, but we do kind of have a shadow that sort of kind of comes under the eye, sort of like how this catches light here. This kind of catches light down here too. We have a little bit of a shadow from that, but, and again, just really subtle, a subtle gray is all you really need. That's probably all you guys will have when you're doing your self-portrait with the grid, just a really subtle gray shadow. I actually don't know if you can see that. Oh, the camera is adjusting. So last but not least, well, actually I don't know if it'll be last, but it might be last today, are eyelashes. So we have our lashes when we're drawing. Here's my little kind of practice one from earlier. Our lashes change direction. So you always want to kind of start, it's like the top eyelid, it's going to kind of go down, up, down, up. And these are really spaced out just to kind of get you an idea of how they're going to curve. But down, up, down, up, down, up. And then they start to curve less as they get more up. And then they're like, say here's the middle of the eye, they're going to change directions and they're going to get shorter. So if this is the inside and this is the outside, they're going to be longer. Down, up, down, up, down, up. Switch directions. Down, up. Lower lid is going to go up, down, up, down, up, down. Switch directions in the middle. Okay. So you might do a little practice of that before you apply it to here, just so that you get an idea. Now, what I also have a lot of people that do is they try to do SpongeBob lashes, and they really do just do a few little spidery ones, real spaced out. But the first, you got to get them a little lower and then let them curve up. Okay, so on your top eyelid, you're going to have them start right along that line, and let me zoom out just a smidge, and then kind of pull and lift. Something else you need to do is when you're doing these, kind of like I'm lifting my pencil as I drag it up. Like I start it and then I kind of lift it up, and that kind of helps it taper a little at the end. So down, up, and you can make them as long as you want. Some will be more overlapped than others, but you see how I'm starting to change directions. Down, up, down, up, down, up, coming from that line. As I get to the inner corner, I'm going to space them out and make them shorter. And then I'm going to do another layer. And I might do 3 layers. Just kind of depends. You need probably at least 2. And letting them crisscross occasionally is only going to kind of make it look a little bit more realistic. Okay. So now on the bottom lid, I'm going a little fast because I'm about out of time. So on the bottom lid, remember it's going to go up, down, up, down, up, down. And I'm going to start it in between that gap there. Okay. So up, down, or yeah, up, down. Spacing them out, fewer, farther between, changing directions. Longer on the outside. Okay, so that is probably all I have time for you today. We will go over an eyebrow tomorrow, and we'll probably add it to this picture. And then we'll also try to learn lips and nose at the same time. I don't know if we'll have time for all 3, but we're going to try to fit them in. So, all right. Y'all have a good one.